Northborough. We Unitarian Universalists are a non-creedal, religiously liberal faith tradition. We hold in our worship and in our faith formation that each individual and each community will explore a wide and varied set of beliefs and ideas that encourage us to live life as a spiritual journey, deepening our connections to compassion, justice, and an understanding of eternal truths. Our interim minister, Reverend Abigail Stockman, is available for questions, so you can be in touch with her. Her contact information should be in your order of worship today. So we're a community of multiple locations, so let's take a moment to greet one another by waving at people online. And I believe, Celia, you said you had an announcement this morning?
Hello, good morning. I just want to give a big thank you to numbers of people because we have updated our member directory. It's posted on the website and it will be sent to you by email to members only this week. And thanks to numbers of people, Alan is one of them who helped get hopefully most of the information correct. But please, if you would take time to look it over to be sure that your contact information is correct, we would welcome that. Susan Tedesco, our admin, did a great job, and Lori Pandit. They've been working together to zip up and dress up the website and communication, and we're getting there. So I just want to thank everybody who's been involved.
We ring our chime to call us into this sacred time of worship.
My colleague, Reverend Naomi King, writes, "Let us join hands and hearts in gratitude on this wondrous day where we have the abundance of our lives before us. We remember this day of bounty all of those who do not have enough, who are afraid, who are lonely, and who suffer. We wish for the abundance of this world to be shared, for fear to become love, for the lonely to feel welcomed, and for the suffering to know rest and joy. For the labors, the love, the care that gave us the delights of this and every day, we say thanks. For the nourishment of our spirit, the challenges that strengthen us, and the friends we have on the journey, we sing thanks. For all that is our lives, for these good gifts we whisper thanks. Overflowing with gratitude, let us shout thanks. Thanks. Amen. And our chalice lighting, words by my colleague, the Reverend Suzelle Lynch. The flame we kindle on the chalice of faith holds blessings of warmth and light and life-giving energy. It shines forth a beacon to guide us all home. It lights up our belongings to connect and to share. It possesses the power to shape a world where equity and compassion reign supreme. May this warmth and light and life-giving energy celebrate the blessings we have claimed and help us extend them in hands and hearts that offer these blessings to all. Would you please join together in hymn number 110, found in your hymnal supplement? Or 1010, I'm sorry. Is there a hymnal supplement that I can borrow? Over on the table. Oh, thank you. Give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for time we share with love and care. Give thanks for this precious day. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for time we share with love and care. Thanks for this precious day. Please. Last year, Danielle Greendeer, Anthony Perry, and Alexis Buntanen published the story Kipunamuk, Wiachamun's Thanksgiving story. It begins, "I love your garden this time of year," said Maple. "Me too. What shall we pick for lunch?" Nokonomus asked. Nokonomus is grandmother. "How about crab apples?" Maple suggested. No, chokeberries," Quill shouted. "Those are both good medicine," Nokomus said. "How about some Wiachamun as well?" Wiachamun is the Wampanoag term for corn. "Yes," Maple replied. "She is such a good big sister to beans and squash." "The three sisters, they grow together," Quill added. "You're right. They feed people all over Turtle Island," Nokomus said. "And they have many stories to tell." "Can you tell us a story?" Quill asked. "How about the time Wiachamun asked our Wampanoag ancestors to help the Pilgrims?" Nokomus replied. "The first Thanksgiving," Maple said. "Some people call it that," Nokomus said. "We call it Kipunamuk, the time of harvest. Here's what really happened. One frosty fall morning a long time ago, a large boat with white sails appeared on the shore. Seagulls circled above the boat, squawking, "New people are coming! New people are coming!" Hear the news. Weachemum stretched her weary ears toward the sky. Hearing the news, Weachemum stretched her weary ears towards the sky. "Who are these new people?" she asked. 2 winters had passed since many of the first peoples who cared for Weachemum passed on to the spirit world. Those who were not taken by sickness found new homes to ease their heavy hearts and rebuild their lives. Corn feared this winter would be her last and called upon Fox to help. Fox looked up at Weachemum. "Should we trust these newcomers?" "Stay close and watch what they do," Weachemum told Fox. Fall turned to winter, and Weachemum and the other plants fell asleep. Fox watched the newcomers come ashore. He watched as they made their way into the forest. He watched them enter an abandoned weru, the hut that the Wakimanon built. He watched them take a cooking pot and a basket of Weachemum seeds. "Don't take us away," the seeds cried. "We're waiting for the first peoples to come back in the spring and prepare out our beds. We must grow first." But the newcomers could not hear the seeds. Their ears did not know the voices of the land. Fox watched the newcomers build homes on top of empty villages. He watched as they searched for food, but they could never find enough to eat. Many of the newcomers lost mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters during the long, cold winter. The first peoples watched as well. News traveled fast among the tribes that newcomers had arrived. Nobody was sure what to make of them. For many years, others had traveled across the sea to hunt and fish and trade. Some were friendly, others were not. These new people seemed different. They were here to stay. Winter turned into spring. The sun warmed the earth. The newcomers continued their search for food. Weachemum awoke from her long slumber and thanked the Creator for another season. She and her sisters, Beans and Squash, pushed through the ground and reached toward the sky. Fox returned to share what he had seen. "The newcomers," said Fox, "are hungry. They took Weachemum's seeds, but they don't know how to help them grow." Other animals came to hear what Fox had to say. "We should help," Weachemum said. "I agree," Beans said. "Our home is their home now." "I think we should too," said Squash. People help us grow." "We must help," Deer said. "We agreed to feed the people. In return, they care for the home that we share." "I wouldn't," said Fox. "The newcomers don't know our world." "Sometimes new people can seem scary," Rabbit said. "The Creator tells us to help all living things. This is how the world works." "Yes," Duck and Turkey agreed. "It's settled," said Weachemum. "We will send the first peoples to help the newcomers." Over the next few nights, Weachemum sent dreams to the first peoples with a message. "Bring me and my sisters to the newcomers. They're hungry and need help." The first peoples listened. Their leader visited the newcomers. He could see that they wanted peace. He introduced the newcomers to Tisquantum. Spring turned into summer. Tisquantum showed the newcomers how to raise Weachemum and her sisters Beans and Squash, and he taught the newcomers how to feed fish and seaweed to Weachemum to help her grow. Soon, Weachemum's seeds pushed through the earth and climbed toward the sky, and Beans wrapped around Weachemum's strong stalks. Squash stretched out her vines across the ground, keeping Weachemum's beans cool and moist. Summer turned to fall. Weachemum brimmed with food. So did beans and squash. Weachemum smiled as the newcomers thanked Tisquantum and the First Peoples for their help. Kipunamuk, the time of harvest, had come. The newcomers prepared a feast to celebrate the first year in their new home. They fired muskets in celebration. The warriors, the leaders, and other First Peoples arrived, and they feasted for 3 days. The meal changed both our lives and their lives forever. Many Americans call it a day of Thanksgiving. Many of our people call it a day of mourning. That's different from what we learned in school, said Maple. It's what Weachemum and other beings of the land, sea, and sky who made the newcomers' first harvest possible. That's right, Nokonomus said. This is why we pray before we eat. Well, what did the newcomers and our ancestors eat? Nokomis Quill asked. Many things. Succotash, duck, turkey, rabbit, deer, lobster, fish, pumpkins, cranberries, boiled bread, and nasop, cornmeal porridge. All this talk about food is making me hungry, Maple said. Let's go make some for lunch. Then Nokonomus laughed. And we'll enjoy every bite, said Quill. A story from our own land. The Wampanoag, who continue to survive and remain active. The Nipmuc from this part of the world, who continue to survive and remain active as the Nipmuc Nation, provide us with a different sense of who the spirit of that first Thanksgiving was. Today we learn it may have been very well the corn. We come to that time in our service when we're given pause to consider what is deepest in our hearts, or most profoundly on our minds, or in the work of our hands in the days that have transpired, or in the prospect of days to come, joys and sorrows that touch us deeply and are given another measure of meaning because of the capacity we have to share them in the midst of a company that claims us as a co-journeyer. So I invite those of you who have joys or sorrows this morning to come forward and to place a stone in the bowl and speak briefly into the microphone so that those using our auditory enhancement devices or who are with us online can also participate in this important ritual. And then for those of you who are online, I would love to turn to you and invite you to share any joys or sorrows that you have as well. Are there joys or sorrows to be? Spirit of life and love, we come this day with gratitude for each other, gratitude for that which lives deepest within us and binds us together with all of life itself. Thankful this day for the many voices that have come before us to remind us of our connections to each other, for homecomings and for four-legged friends, for the care and compassion that allows us to attend to each other, for the gratitude that rest can inspire us to achieve, for the opportunity to celebrate the birthdays and anniversaries that come and remind us of the growth that is possible with time. Help us to remember that in these days of feasting, there are many for whom such anniversaries and opportunities bring difficult memories. We ask for healing. We ask for time to consider the possibilities afforded us when we are able to share that which is deepest in us with each other. And we claim a larger family of friends. Help us to remember that we are connected to a wide and wondrous movement and network of communities that wish for us our own well-being and for whom we return the same. For all of this, all of that which has been spoken and all of that which has transcended the spoken word but is no less real, right, true, or good, we give thanks this day. Amen, and blessed be.
Our financial offering each week is shared between the general operating fund of this church and a designated nonprofit organization. For the month of November, we set the half plate aside to Community Meals of Northborough. May we continue to be as generous as we are able. The offering for the work of this congregation will now be gratefully received and, we hope, gratefully given.
My name is Francis Tulliver and I come from Liverpool. 2 years ago, the war was waiting for me after school. To Belgium, then to Flanders, to Germany, to here. I fought for king and country I loved dear. 'Twas Christmas in the trenches where the frost so bitter hung. The frozen fields of France were still, no Christmas songs were sung. Our families back in England were toasting us that day. The brave and glorious lads so far away. I was lying with my messmate on the cold and rocky ground when across the lines of battle came a most peculiar sound. Says I, now listen up me boys, each soldier strained to hear, as one young German voice sang out so clear. He's singing bloody well, you know, my partner says to me. Soon one by one each German voice joined in harmony. The cannons rested silently, the gas clouds rolled no more, as Christmas brought us respite from the war. As soon as they were finished, a reverent pause was spent. God rest ye merry gentlemen, struck up some lads from Kent. The next they sang was Still Nacht, 'twas silent night, says I. And into Young's one song filled up that sky. There's someone coming toward us, the frontline sentry cry. All sights were fixed on one lone figure trudging from their side. His His truce flag like a Christmas star shone on the plain so bright, as he bravely strode unarmed into the night. Then one by one on either side we walked in no man's land. With neither gun nor bayonet we met there hand to hand. We shared some secret brandy and we wished each other well. And in a flare-lit soccer game we gave 'em hell. We traded chocolates, cigarettes, and photographs. These sons and fathers far away from families of their own. Young Saunders played his squeeze box, and they had a violin. This curious and unlikely band of men. Soon daylight stole upon us, and France was France once more. With sad farewells we began to settle back to war. But the questions haunted every heart that lived that wondrous night. Whose families have I fixed within my sights? 'Twas Christmas in the trenches where the frost so bitter hung. The frozen fields of France were warmed as Christmas songs were sung. For the walls they kept between us to exact the work of war have been crumbled and are gone forevermore. Oh, my name is Francis Tolliver, in Liverpool I dwell. Each Christmas comes since World War I, I've learned its lessons well, that the ones who call the shots won't be among the dead and lame. And on each end of the rifle we're all the same.
One of my favorite stories from the history of World War I. And how I wish that ethic were alive today. This summer, Rosemary Watola Tromer published a poem entitled At the Market. She writes, now when I walk through the market, I think of how someone else here beside the stir-fry cart and the tie-dye tent has just lost a beloved and is hiding tears behind sunglasses. Not knowing who they are, I try to treat everyone with kindness. Meanwhile, the day is beautiful for everyone, no matter how broken, how whole their hearts. It gathers us all in a grand blue embrace. Part of me resists calling it a miracle, and the other part calls it what it is and strolls through the miracle of Friday morning surrounded by arugula and strawberries and muffins and lilies and all of these other fragile hearts. All of us is saying, "Excuse me, good morning. How are you?" "I'm fine." The poet's words bring to mind experiences that I had growing up with both my mother and my father, who seemed to have a certain quality or tone to their voice, or perhaps it was their countenance, but there was never a quiet and quick, "How are you?" anywhere. Grocery store, restaurant, middle of the street, I don't care. When my mother in particular asked a stranger, "How are you?" there was something in that exchange which required at least a 20-minute response, and a very frustrated two young children who wanted to know why everyone was stepping around us in the line. But that's exactly what I remember most about my mother and my father. And I think I have inherited some of that, especially as my family and I enter a restaurant, and I am always the last person to the table because there's at least one person in the restaurant that I need to go check in with before I eat. The families of ministers sometimes have to bear the brunt of this kind of activity, as do other families, I'm certain. But I feel a certain kinship to the words of the poet Rosemary Tromer because of that experience, that a simple question, "How are you?" can and ought to be taken seriously, and that one learns with patience that the answer that comes is often more profound than the question itself. So, those simple questions abounded in other places too in my household growing up. In my youth, my family and I arrived at the table on Thanksgiving Day to find a modest but delectable banquet of breads and beans and stuffing and potatoes, turkey and gravy, our places beset with my mother's favorite china, a reminder that this was indeed a special occasion. As we stood admiring our feast, attention turned quickly to a combination that seemed almost out of place in the midst of such plenty. An empty place setting at the table, and in the middle of it, well, let me show you. In the middle of it, 3 kernels of corn, which you are welcome to come and take, or will be passed around. Take a small handful, if you will. Three kernels of corn dawned each of our plates. Familiar words were told then of the first Thanksgiving in America when our forebears arrived at a similar feast to find corn on their table. Staple of the harvest and symbol of all that those first settlers and their indigenous American hosts had to be thankful for. Or maybe, as Danielle Greendeer reminds us, it was the spirit of the feast itself, made known in 3 kernels. A couple of years ago, Joshua Mark published an article online reminding readers that corn was central to the lives of indigenous Americans across the North, Central, and South America. Maize, as it was known, was introduced to North America from Mesoamerica at about between 700 and 900 of the Common Era, and transformed the lives of indigenous peoples. Every tribal nation has its origin story of this gift that came from the gods to feed the people. In some stories, corn is the gift from the corn mother. In others, it came from the old woman who never dies, a corn spirit who also taught the people to give proper thanks. And in others, corn itself was the deity who gave itself for the good of the people. A Sauk tale relates how 2 hunters were sitting by a fire, offered roast venison to a beautiful woman who visited them and seemed hungry. And in gratitude for their generosity, she told them to return to that spot in a year. And when they did, they found corn, beans, and tobacco growing where she had sat. In an Abenaki tale, a man living alone and yearning for company is visited by a beautiful woman who tells him to set fire to a field, and when it is burnt over, to drag her by the hair across it. He refuses at first, but she tells him he must do as he is told for the greater good, and if he does, she will remain with him as a constant companion. After he has dragged her across the field, she tells him to look for stalks that appear as grass, but will have something that looks like hair coming from them when they are ripe. And then she vanishes. And when the corn appears, the man recognizes the silk of the cornstalk as the woman's hair and is comforted knowing she will always be with him. The Sioux tell a different tale. Alone in a deep forest far from the village of his people lived a hermit. His tent was made of buffalo skins and his robe was made of deerskin. Far from the haunts of any human being, this old hermit was content to spend his many years. All day long he wandered through the forest, studying the different plants and collecting roots. The roots he used as food and medicine. At long intervals, some warrior would arrive at his tent and get medicinal roots from him for the tribe. The old hermit's medicine was considered far superior to others. One day, after a long ramble in the woods, the hermit came home so tired that immediately after eating, he lay down in his bed. And just as he was dozing off to sleep, he felt something rub against his feet. Awakened with a start, he noticed a dark object. It extended an arm toward him, and in its hand was a flint-pointed arrow. This must be a spirit, thought the hermit. There's no human being here but me. The voice then said, "Hermit, I have come to invite you to my home." "I will come," the old hermit replied. So he rose, wrapped his robe around him, and started toward the voice. Outside the door, he looked around, and he could see no sign of the dark object. "Whatever you are or wherever you be," said the hermit, "wait for me. I don't know where to go and find your house." He received no answer, nor did he hear any sound of someone walking through the brush. Re-entering his tent, he lay down and was soon fast asleep. The next night, he again heard the voice say, "Hermit, I have come to invite you to my home." The hermit walked out of his tent to find the person with that voice, but again he found no one. This time he was angry because he thought that someone was making sport of him. He was determined to find out who was disturbing his night's rest. The next evening he cut a hole in the tent large enough to stick an arrow through. Then he stood by the door watching. Soon the dark object came, stopped outside the door, and he said, "Grandfather, I came to," but he never finished his sentence, and the old hermit had shot his arrow. He heard it strike something that produced a sound as though it had been shot into a sack of pebbles. Early the next morning, the hermit went out and looked at the spot near where he thought his arrow had struck some object, and there on the ground lay a heap of corn. And from this little heap, a small line of corn lay scattered along a path. The old hermit followed it into the woods, and when he reached a small mound, the trail ended. At its end was a large circle from which the grass had been scraped off clean. "The corn trail stops at the edge of the circle," the old man said to himself. "This must be the home of whatever invited me." He took his big bone axe and knife and proceeded to dig down into the center of the circle, and when he got as far down as he could, he came to a sack of dried meat. Next, he found a sack of turnips, then a sack of dried cherries, and a sack of corn. Last of all was another sack, empty except for one cup of corn. In the other corner was a hole where the hermit's arrow had pierced the sack. From this hole, the corn had been scattered along the trail which had guided the old man to the hiding place. From this, the hermit taught his people how to keep their provisions while they were traveling. "Dig a pit," he explained to them. "Put your provisions in it and cover them with earth. By this method, the Sioux used to keep provisions all summer. And when fall came, they returned to their hiding place, and when they opened it, they could find all the provisions as fresh as they were from the day that they had placed them there. The people thanked the old hermit for his discovery of this method of preserving their food, and they thanked him for the discovery of corn, the first that they had seen. It became one of the most important foods that they knew. Important foods. Pete Wells, in an article in the New York Times, described the growing food sovereignty movement among indigenous Americans in order to reclaim control over the production of corn for their people. Concluding his work, Wells writes, "The United States is in the middle of a fierce battle over the stories Americans tell themselves about how the nation was built and what it stands for today. Dramatic and at times violent conflicts have erupted over monuments to Confederate soldiers, institutions named after slave traders and plantation owners, the history lessons children learn in the books they read, efforts to revise popular narratives about history to include Black, Indigenous, and other points of view have been ignored, and resistance to these efforts are now a central feature of political life. One aim of many stories Americans tell about Thanksgiving is nation building. In 1863, when he called for the first observance of the national holiday, President Abraham Lincoln asked my fellow citizens to fervently implore the interposition of the almighty hand to heal the wounds of the nation and to restore it as soon as may be consistent with thy divine purposes to the full enjoyment of peace and harmony, tranquility, and union. Another aim is to paper over the long and shameful history of killing Native Americans, driving them from their land and shattering their culture. For many Native people, Thanksgiving is a national day of mourning, a time to remember what they have lost since Europeans first sailed into sight. And then you have Danielle Greendeer, a member of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, who, when she finished her original tale of that 1621 feast, wrote a story in which the corn itself was the star and the progenitor of the survival of both native tribes and those first settlers. Her book is about corn in the cultural history of the culinary world and her taking a position of authority and guidance over her people. All her people, writes Greendeer, without discrimination. At the Thanksgiving table of my childhood, looking at 3 kernels of corn, the question came, what 3 things are you grateful for this year? Answers ran from new bicycles to baseball gloves to friends and family and fun activities. As a boy, gratitude came in response to those things in my life that made me feel good and the people who gave them to me. Over time, such self-centered Thanksgiving turned to a less tangible for the love of family and friends, for the privilege of a college education, for good health, and the prospect of a bright future. More often than more aware than of the world of iniquities, gratitude for things turned into gratitude for opportunities. This year, as I prepared to sit at our table of plenty with my own children, the challenge came with an increasing awareness of how gratitude can quickly fade in a haze of uncertainty about our world and our future. I used to be grateful for things I got. Now I struggle to come to terms with the things I have in a world that seems filled to the brim with have-nots. And I struggle with the intangibles too, wanting my children to have a better life than I, and worrying about the state of the world and the legacy of consumption that my generation will most certainly cost those who follow. And then it occurs to me that this is where and when I must learn to be grateful for awareness. that what I do impacts others, how I choose to spend my resources and my time and my energy, all that I am gifted with and responsible for, is always a choice, even if it feels like a burden sometimes. The Deuteronomist said it most plainly. I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Choose life so that you and your descendants may live. Choose life. Choose a way of living that makes for life in the largest sense of the word, a spirited, passionate, and compassionate living that continually seeks to expand the embrace of those who are its neighbor and friend and family. A cosmic embrace that embodies a love that does not shrink in the presence of fear or anger or violence or uncertainty, a love that will and cannot die. Then I remember the other tradition at my Thanksgiving table, a place set for the guest that is yet to arrive. Either the unknown person who always showed up at my house about dinner time, being the son of a minister meant that lots of people showed up to talk to Dad, and it always seemed interesting to me that it was always at dinner. And my family had this tradition of always setting at least one, if not more, extra places at the table, not knowing if they would be full, but certainly they were most of the time, because my father's answer to anyone who came to the door is, I'm glad to talk with you, but you have to eat first. And my brother and I brought home friends who used to call us family because they did not sit with their family at dinner. There was always conversation, too. And there was bantering back and forth, and there were questions and debates, and there were opportunities to learn to listen to each other, and then to swap sides if we disagreed. My father and my mother were masterful at teaching us both the art of conversation and the art of listening deeply. And there was always room for one more at that table. And there always is. Grateful once for the things and for the opportunities in my life, I turn more now to an awareness of the larger world and my privileged place in it, and offer thanksgiving for the continuing push to extend my embrace, to perpetually make room for one more in my life, and to celebrate each moment as an opportunity to live the love that gifts me with hope and courage, even in the most uncertain times. Amen, and blessed be. Would you please join together in our closing hymn, number 1068, found in your teal hymnals. Rise in the roots of yon oak, her sap doth run in my veins, boundless my soul like the open sky, where the stars forever reign, where the stars forever reign. My hands hold weavings of time without end, my sight as deep as the sea, beating my heart sounds the masters of old, that of love's eternity, that of love's eternity. I feel the tides as they answer the moon, rushing on a far distant sand, winging my soul is the winds of my breast, and my love blows over the land. And my love, and my love, and my love blows over the land. My real things of the old into new. Our dreaming shows us the way. Wondrous our faith settles deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. Rising green, rising green, rising green to bring a new day. My colleague of beloved memory, Barbara Peskin, writes, because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, and to bow to the mystery. Amen. And blessed be.
This song was recorded and released just before 9/11, and people weren't in the mood for being grateful. But if you know it, please sing along. La da 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 da. La da 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 da. La da 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 da. La da 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 da. Ooh, you've been so kind and generous, and I don't know how you keep on giving. For your kindness, I'm in debt to you. For your selflessness, my admiration. For everything you've done, you know I'm bound to thank you for it. La da 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 da. La da 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 da. La da 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 da. Da 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 da. Hey, 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 hey. You've been so kind and generous, and I don't know how you keep on giving. For your kindness, I'm in debt to you. And I never could have come this far without you. For everything you've done, you know I'm bound to thank you for it. La da 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 day. La da 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 la da 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 la da 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 da. I want to thank you for the many gifts you gave with love and tenderness. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your generosity, the love and the honesty that you gave me. I want to thank you, show my gratitude, my love and my respect for you. wanna thank you. Oh, I thank you, 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 thank you.